Hello everybody, and welcome to another video about the history of old First Division teams. And in this video I'm going to look at the team I support, West Bromwich Albion, and their history. Let's start in the 1950s, when Albion won the FA Cup in 1954, the 53-54 season. That was the season when Albion were trying to win the old First Division title, and our fierce rivals, Wolves, were top of the old First Division in that season. Unfortunately, Albion didn't win it. We had injuries and a loss of form towards the end of the season, and Wolves won the First Division title. But Albion did win the FA Cup in 1954, and we beat Preston North End 3-2. And we now go into the 1960s, where Albion, the early 60s, Albion didn't have much to celebrate. We didn't have much success in the early 60s. Albion took part in the Old League Cup in 1965-66, and we won that. Then it was the Old League Cup was played over two legs. We played West Ham and we beat them in the two legs to win the Old League Cup. And then the following year, the first league final was played at Wembley. And Albion once again were in the final of the League Cup. We played Queen's Park Rangers in 1967, and unfortunately, Queen's Park Rangers beat us 3-2. Albion were 2-0 up half time, but in the second half, Queen's Park Rangers came back to beat us, and a young Rodney Marsh scored a goal against us. But the following year, in 1968, we won the FA Cup, beating Everton 1-0. That was in extra time. And Jeff Astle scored the goal, and he also scored in every round, from the third round of the FA Cup until the final itself. He was known as the King. He was the Bromwich Road end of the ground. Used to call him the King, called him King Astle. Towards the end of the 60s, we were close to getting to Wembley again in another FA Cup final. This time we reached the semi-final of the FA Cup of that year, 1969. Unfortunately, we were knocked out of the semi-finals by Leicester City. A certain Alan Clark, who went on to play for Leeds United, he scored the winning goal, and that knocked Albion out of the FA Cup. When we did win the FA Cup in 1968, we were in Europe. We were in the old Winners' Cup, and Albion had a reasonable run in that. I think we could have won it. But unfortunately, when we got to the quarter-finals, Dunfermline Athletic of Scotland beat us. The first leg ended goalless, and they beat us 1-0 in the return leg at the Hawthorns. And in the start of the 1970s, was a decade to forget for Albion. We were once again in another cup final the League Cup final of that year, the 69-70 season. Unfortunately, we lost to Manchester City. I should know, I was there Saturday in the March of that year. We lost to Manchester City 2-1. That went to, we lost to them in extra time. Albion, Jeff Astle was still playing for Albion then. He scored the opening goal. In about 5 minutes, I think. I think we scored too early. And that day, pitch was, well, nothing. It was nothing like Wembley pitch is today. The pitch back then in the 70s, Wembley pitch was an absolute mud heap. It was a terrible pitch. Unfortunately, like I've said, we lost 2-1. Francis Lee, he equalised for Manchester City. I think it was near the end, because we were getting towards the end of the match, and it went into extra time. And if I remember rightly, I think Glenn Pardoe of Manchester City scored the winning goal, and we lost 2-1. Like I've said, the start of the 70s was not a very good decade for Albion. Back then, in the start of the 70s, we seemed to be on a downward spiral. And at the end of the 70-71 season, Alan Ashman, who was our manager then, he was sacked and he was replaced by Don Howe. Now, Don Howe used to play for the Albion, and of course, he was Arsenal's assistant manager to Bertie McNee. Of course, Arsenal won the double in the 70-71 season. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for Don Howe when he becomes Albion manager, like he did at Arsenal when they won the old First Division. Didn't work out for him. And in the following season, the 72-73 season, we were relegated from the old First Division to the Second Division, and we spent a few years in the old Second Division. And in 1975, as we got towards the end of the 70s, Don Howe was sacked. And in the summer of that year, the Albion board, the Albion board the Albion board appointed Johnny Giles as our player manager. It was in the start of the 75-76 season. And of course, we won promotion that season. Johnny Giles was a midfield general. He played for Leeds United. I don't know how they persuaded him. The Albion board persuaded him to come to the Albion, but they persuaded him somehow. And Johnny Giles, when he became our play manager, he brought in a few players that he thought he could do a job of getting Albion out of the old Second Division. He bought Paddy Mulligan from Crystal Palace, and he also bought Ricky Martin, and also we bought Joe Mayo from Warsaw. And of course, we won our last match of the season against Oldham Athletic to secure our place back into the First Division. Unfortunately, that following season, Johnny Giles was resigned, but I think the board talked him into staying for another season, which he did, the 76-77 season. Albion then, in the late 70s, when we was in the old First Division, we had some matches with teams. We won some and we lost some. And of course, at the end of that season, the 76-77 season, Ronnie Giles left and he was replaced by Ronnie Allen. Now, Ronnie Allen was another former Albion player and he became manager. And of course, he bought in Cyril Regis, who turned out to be another Albion support folk hero. And you know what? Consider some of the goals he scored. But unfortunately, Ronnie Allen didn't last long at Albion. By the end of the year, that year, 77, he was persuaded by Jimmy Hill, who was chairman of Coventry City, to go to manage a team in Saudi Arabia. I suppose he went there because they offered him more money if he could get at the Albion. So he left in that year. I think it was the December of that year. And we were looking then for a new manager. And then we found one in the January of 78, Ronnie Allen. Ron Atkinson. We found him. He came from Cambridge United. And he brought in a few more players. Well, while Johnny Giles was there, he brought in Laurie Cunningham from Leighton Orient, and what a player he was. What a player he was, Laurie Cunningham. Of course, he got an England cap, but I don't think he got many England caps. But he was a great player, Laurie Cunningham. And that's when Albion, then when Ron Atkinson was manager, we started to look a team that could possibly challenge for the old First Division title. I mean, we had the three black players, 3 degrees as we call them, Brendan Batson, and Cyril Regis and Laurie Cunningham. Unfortunately for Albion, Laurie Cunningham left Albion in 1979 to Real Madrid. They made an offer for him, and of course, who's going to turn down Real Madrid? But back then, in the late 70s, towards the end of the 70s, that's when Albion had a team that we beat at challenging for the league title. Unfortunately, we didn't win it, but we had some memorable matches along the way, especially when we played Manchester United on the New Year's Day of that year. I don't forget that match when we beat them 5-3 at Old Trafford. But after that, the start of the 80s, that's when our decline set in. And Ron Atkinson, he left Albion to manage Manchester United. And like I've just said about Laurie Cunningham, if Manchester United keep calling, who's going to turn them down? The start of the 80s, that's when our decline started, like I've just said. And we were relegated to the old second division. And unfortunately, that was when our glory days ended. Although when Ron Atkinson was there, we did reach the 78 FA Cup semi-final, where Ipswich beat us. And then Ronnie Allen came back for another spell, and he took us to 2 domestic semi-finals, the League Cup final. I think we lost to the semi-finals of the League Cup. I think we lost to Tottenham, and we also lost in the 1982 FA Cup semi-final to Queen's Park Rangers. Well, that's the end of the history of West Bromwich Albion. I'll see you all again in another video.